Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton and the one and only Tandreia Bellamy here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Tandreia, how are you doing today?
I'm great. I always enjoy spending time with you.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? We hear it from our audience as well. They enjoy your perspective and expertise each and every show. And we're delighted you're here, Tandreia, for, as folks know, it's The Buzz, where every Monday at 12 noon Eastern Time, we discuss a variety of news and developments across global supply chain and business. Now, hey, to keep it real, usually we are indeed live. However, today we're pre-recorded because we had an in-person event we had to be out to that hit at the same time. Tandreia, it's best just to be transparent and keep it real with our audience out there, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But with that said, you'll probably find a couple of our team members, namely Amanda and Catherine, who are the production muscle behind the scenes to help keep us running. They may be in the comments, so we look forward to your perspective. And along that line, we've got some great stories to get into here today. Tandreia, we're going to be talking about the ongoing labor talks of the East Coast and the Gulf ports. We're going to be talking about, for you shippers out there, we've got some great tips for better handling peak season. It's almost upon us. And a couple of interesting trends going on in the warehousing world and a lot more. Tandreia, what is out of all those topics and then some? We got a little update from Anthony, your neck of the woods, which we'll touch on in a second. What's one thing you're looking most forward to talking about here on the Buzz today?
The warehousing trends, being in supply chain and really loving all of the advancements that are going on. Definitely talking about the warehousing trends.
That's right. And I'm sure you have seen quite the evolution given your journey. So look forward to diving more into that in just a second. But hey, two things before we get going. So we'd love to get your take in the comments. Give us your take on the stories, your opinion, what you're seeing, you name it. And whether you're tuned in via LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Facebook, Twitch, it's a lot. No matter whatever your platform of choice, let us know what you think. And if you enjoy the show today, we'd love for you to share it with a friend in your network. They'll be glad you did. Okay, Tandreia, I am excited. We got 4 stories we'll get to in a second, but we've got a couple of items to talk about on the front end. And we're going to lead off with my favorite. And I'm gonna pop up this image here. Sheer delight. Congratulations to Anthony for graduating from Middle Tennessee State University. He's a pilot. And I think this is what this image here, if you are tuned in via LinkedIn or YouTube or can see it, this is his graduation flight. Is that right, Tandreia?
That is correct. Love MTSU. And as a part of the program, each graduating pilot gets to take a family member up for a flight. So it was just he and I flying around Murfreesboro and the surrounding areas. He took me, over to campus. So being able to get literally a bird's eye view of the campus was super cool. But just spending time with him in his element was great.
Oh, that is awesome. I cannot wait to catch up more and learn more. We were talking earlier this week off camera, so to speak, about the Herculean, if I said that right, logistics effort when it came to celebrating graduation up there at Murfreesboro. That was quite a feat you pulled off, Tandreia.
It was amazing. It was wonderful. I had a beautiful home that I had rented out, 5 bedrooms and a ton of space for my 30 plus guests that I cooked for and hosted for them to come and celebrate my son. And it was amazing.
Well, special congrats to you and the whole family. Of course, Anthony, we really enjoyed our sit down with you and him probably about 4 or 5 months ago. And I cannot wait to see the heights, no pun intended, that his career is going to take off too. So looking forward to reconnecting with Anthony soon. So congrats.
Thank you.
And as I'm getting a text here, it is Herculean. I was told I added an extra syllable or two. So it happens, folks. It happens. All right. Talking about, well, this isn't going to be nearly as good as the good news that was, but I did want to share one of my most recent Friday morning messages focused on good news. I attended Tandra, a great event hosted by our friends over at Reuters.
Mhm.
It was Supply Chain USA 2024 right here in Atlanta. I had an outstanding panel session and a really cool fireside chat. And one of the key takeaways out of many, I came away with my 17 pages of notes, but one of the key ones was, how are we managing the digital talent imperative, right? And we've all heard a lot about the talent gaps. There's so many different ones when it comes to the global industry, but certainly global supply chain. But in particular, in this age of digital transformation, how are we not only bringing new digital talent into the organization, but equally as important, how are we upskilling our current workforce so they can find new ways to achieving success and play a critical role in the digital transformations that are taking place out in the industry? Any thoughts there, Tandrea?
It's just like when we talked about vocational, the need for vocational education, getting our young people involved early so that we're not having to constantly retrain. Get them involved, get them engaged, do more relevant types of things in high school, early in college, so you not only get them engaged, but we retain them so that we have an abundance of talent instead of a scarcity of talent.
That's right. Well said. Got to get them when they're young and they've got questions, and you can help open up new windows of opportunity rather than them relying on the old assumptions and the old traditional pathways. I love that comment, Tandrea. You and I have been out in schools talking supply chain. It's been a few years, but we're gonna have to crank that back out, because I'll tell you, there's few things in this life as getting really powerful questions about supply chain and jobs and opportunities from like a fourth grader. It really is remarkable.
Yes, pique that curiosity early.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, good stuff there, folks. Lots more good news to come. Hey, really quick, speaking of making things convenient for folks, I want to make sure, if you haven't already, make sure you track down Supply Chain Now on YouTube. We're getting close to 10,000 subscribers, and a lot of times, if you're on the move, if you're working out, if you're driving, if you don't have a great connection maybe with your podcast player of choice, it's easy to pop on to YouTube and check out all of our programming. So y'all check that out. Okay, Tandrea, we got a lot to get into today. You ready to go?
Let's go.
All right. So the first story coming up, I love this picture we got. That is that's Savannah, where you can just about, it feels like, reach out when you're downtown walking on River Street, I guess it is. It feels like you can just about reach out and touch the container ships as they're up and down the river. It's a really cool town. But before we get it, actually, I'm getting ahead, Tandrea. One more thing I want to touch on before we get into news, and that is, for many of our new listeners, they may not know of your incredible background, Tandrea, because you've been moving mountains out in industry and global supply chain for about 30 years, including a really successful career at UPS, where you moved into the executive suite, especially when it comes to supply chain engineering. And I think it's really important for that context, when we start diving into news stories and trends and supply chain issues, folks to know that these are practitioners having these conversations. Your thoughts there, Tandrea?
And you're absolutely right. I had the privilege of being with UPS for over 30 years, started in the small pack, watched the growth and implementation of technology and how much it changed the business there, and then moved to our supply chain solutions business unit. And same thing, watching how warehousing, which is why that warehousing conversation is so intriguing for me,
right?
Watching how warehousing changed from everything being manual to how we can implement technology to make things much more accurate and much more efficient.
Love that, Tandrea. And next time you're with us, I didn't have time. I'd reached out and invited you when we first met, probably, 10 or 12 years ago, to sit in on some panels and stuff. And I had a couple snapshots somewhere of the fun we had getting you to share your expertise. I'll track that down for our next show. How's that sound, Tandrea?
Sounds great, Scott.
Okay. All right. So now, folks, let's get into the first news story. And we're going to be focused in on what's going on in terms of the ongoing negotiations that are taking place, again, East Coast and Gulf Coast ports here in the U.S. And this comes from our friends at Supply Chain Dive. Folks, there's lots and lots at stake. So let me unpack it, and then we're going to get Tandreia to comment here. So the current 6-year contract for workers between the International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA, and the United States Maritime Alliance, the USMX. You know, we love our acronyms in global supply chain. So those groups, and with their relationship with a variety of East and Gulf Coast ports, right? Well, all that's set to expire on September 30th. Now, if a deal isn't reached, of course, a potential strike would set off an extraordinary new round of disruptions for many, many supply chains out there. Some say that a handful of companies are already rerouting their shipments back to West Coast ports here in the U.S. to avoid any possible impact. But that's a bit murky to determine because some volume had already started to shift for other reasons, such as the Red Sea attacks, the Panama Canal water level issues, and many, many more. Interestingly enough, if you recall, it was last year that the West Coast ports here in the U.S., well, they were the ones negotiating their next labor contract. So cycles of life that fuels the global supply chain engine. Tandreia, your thoughts on what's playing out at East Coast and Gulf Coast ports?
Well, you know, the first thing is this just shows how incredibly important it is to stay connected. There's so many things now that affect supply chains, a lot of things that you just really didn't take into consideration before. The other thing for this East Coast negotiation is there have been a lot of big wins by big labor last year. So as they're negotiating, they need to be really prepared to pay. And those big wins have happened across multiple industries. You know, you look at United Auto Workers and the big raises they got. The writer's strike, I mean, it was very public, and they got one of the biggest wage concessions that they had in decades, but secondarily, some protection from AI and more residual payments for reruns and streaming. So not all of the concessions are just in wages. Kaiser, you know, the healthcare workers there,
right?
They won protection against outsourcing as well as a boost in pay. And I know UPS, they part-timers got definitely their largest wage increase in forever.
Wow.
They added an additional holiday, which is, you know, pretty costly. They agreed to put air conditioning in the vehicles. So the companies out there that are watching these negotiations, all I can say is be prepared to pay.
Be prepared to pay. You heard it from Tandreia Bellamy here today. You know, it's been the last 3 years, it feels like it's been the year of the ongoing year of the workforce to all those gains that you're talking about. And I love how you also spoke about, particularly in the Southeast, where UAW, they had a big win in at Volkswagen's Chattanooga plant, I believe, right?
Yes.
And that is paving the way for basically a new Southern campaign where I think they've targeted the number 29 comes to me. I'm not sure if they've targeted dozens of new plants to unionize. And of course, that'll be an interesting factor, one of many, as it plays into what's going on at the ports and the critical workforce there. So Tandreia, here's the, I was going to say $1 billion question, but with inflation, it could be $1 trillion question. Will a deal get done before September 30th?
I think it will, because of the ramifications. And we've had so many disruptions. So, like you said, Red Sea and what that's doing, Panama. So I don't think we can really afford that type of major disruption in the supply chain, because you think about all of the other things that go with it. Imbalances in inventory, imbalances in containers, imbalances in where the ships are located, which can then create more empty runs to get them back, which just adds cost.
Yep.
And, the economy has been a high level of uncertainty, and we really can't afford to add more to it.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So I'm going to take all of what you said, completely agree with you, and I'm going to put an emphatic point on the end. A deal, and this is my take, my bold, fearless, not bold, maybe a little bit fearless prediction is that a deal is going to be done by September 30th. And if we're not making enough progress, I think government will get involved and certainly help bring the sides together, make it happen. Because to Tandreia's point, otherwise it is major disruption on top of all the normal and abnormal disruption that is already shaking industry. So good stuff there. All right. So Tandreia, I want to move right along and touch on a related topic, because right around the corner is peak season. And I'll get your take here in a second, but I want to tee this up if I could. So of course, I'm referring to what traditionally has been one of the busiest times of the year for businesses and their supply chains, especially in the U.S. It is traditionally ran from, say, mid-August through about Thanksgiving, but for years now, as shoppers have spread out their buying patterns, peak season has been stretched and spread out a bit too. And following peak season, we get into the new year, and that's when a tidal wave of returns will be hitting, a growing tidal wave. Some legit, but also a growing fraudulent problem when it comes to fraudulent returns will make up part of that tidal wave. In fact, the National Retail Federation has estimated that almost 14% of all returns were fraudulent in 2023, costing retailers over $100 billion. Goodness gracious. But for our forward supply chains, Tandreia, when it comes to peak season, and if you had the captive audience of our shippers out there in our audience, what are some ways that you would suggest that they better mitigate peak season 2024?
Do everything as early as you possibly can. With the labor uncertainty that we spoke of, with what we've seen, how international events can impact supply chains, the earlier you can do things, the better, whether that's getting your inventory in place early, marketing and having sales of your retailers to get customers to buy early. Whatever you can do to pull your peak season forward will give you some assurances against some of these uncertainties, especially the economic uncertainty. We're going to be hitting the main part of election season right at the buying peak season, which can create other uncertainties. So if you can get your consumers to consume early, get their products from you early, I think it would just really help the situation.
That is right. And I'll tell you one thing we may agree on. I am looking forward to election season as much as I am getting 6 cavities filled on the same day, Tandreia.
Goodness.
All right.
I agree. Hey, another plus with getting things done early is avoiding all of those peak season surcharges.
Oh, that's a big one. It's a big one. So if you can pull it forward, get ahead of the Joneses. And it sounds like to me, not only will you have less issues, you may be able to pay and mitigate extra costs a little better. And certainly your team will have more time to handle any of the unexpected things that comes along, whether it's peak season or non-peak season. That's what happens in global supply chain. Good stuff. And, one more thing, good stuff there, Tandreia. One more thing I want to add in. We've long have amplified thought leadership and challenges, but also innovations in the reverse logistics and the returns management space, partnering with our friend Tony Shirota over at the Reverse Logistics Association. Stay tuned. We got some really cool new episodes coming up soon. And folks, if you haven't, if you're a business leader that's been so focused on forward supply chain, and especially if you're in retail and some of the other sectors that really deal with returns, hey, now's the time. Shine a big old flashlight and find new ways of doing things better. The technologies and the new ideas and innovations in that space is changing the game. And it's good. That's good for consumers. It's good for our planet and many, many other aspects of global supply chain. All right. Tandreia Bellamy. The next place we want to go here. So we've talked about the port negotiations. We've talked about peak season. Now I want to dive into, a lot of folks know that we dive into analysis of the domestic freight market about every quarter. We've got a show that talks through the U.S. Bank Freight Payment Index. Now, about a month or so ago, I'm going to pop this up here, we dove into the latest release, which covered first quarter 2024. And again, this focuses on the U.S. Freight market, right? And I love, personally, we've been doing this for probably 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years. I love all the transportation and economic insights and data that these reports from the U.S. Bank team, what they cover, right? And folks, it's easy to get your own copy, free copy of that, of the Freight Payment Index every quarter. You can click on freight.usbank.com. You'll see there, if you're watching us, you'll see where not only they cover coast to coast, but they dive into 5 separate regions, which has some common elements to the freight market, but also has some very unique elements to the freight market. So check that out from our friends over at US Bank. And Tandreia, looking forward to getting you to join me on some of those upcoming shows. But on the first quarter 2024 that came out a month and some change ago, what's a key takeaway or two that you took from that report?
It was really interesting to look at the fact that both shipments and revenues were down. Something that's really good for us, gas prices were down year over year, but
right.
From the revenue standpoint, that also took away some of the fuel surcharges. So it had a positive impact on the cost of doing business, but a negative impact on revenues. And that's not really something you can mitigate for.
Right.
Now, retail overall grew minimally, but I was really surprised because sarcastically, I thought e-commerce would have been down since more companies are making people go in office and you can't just shop all day long.
Right.
However, first quarter year over year, e-commerce was up. So there's something else that's driving these shipments, and it may just be part of how business has changed, because as long as e-commerce is continuing to grow, shipment sizes are smaller. You're not having massive amounts of inventory that's going to retail establishments, which would absolutely impact freight. Weather we account for all the time, so we know weather is going to occur. So there has to be some other underlying causes of what's causing both shipments and revenues to be down.
Yeah. Good stuff there, Tandreia. Speaking of those e-commerce numbers you referenced, you ever wonder, I think R.H. Macy was the founder of Macy's, right? Way, 100 and 200 years ago, whatever it was. I wonder what they would think today, knowing that their targeted customers walk around with access to buying from their stores every single hour, right? It's kind of like people, foot traffic staying in your store 24/7. It is fascinating. And of course, one element of e-commerce that you were mentioning, of course, mobile commerce, m-commerce is also growing dramatically because it's just that convenient these days. Tandreia, any other thoughts there in terms of just the ease of which we can spend money these days, huh?
Oh my. Now, when we talk about getting kids involved early, they have figured that one out. Even my 5-year-old great niece will tell me, just order it for me. Just order it for me, Gigi. Just get it for me. So that is, and we saw the explosive nature of it during COVID.
Right.
That convenience factor has everybody hooked.
Yeah.
I know earlier you talked about the fraud in reverse logistics. Companies have made it so easy to overorder and return that is almost a natural outgrowth of it.
That's right.
You don't even have to have boxes down. You just walk up to someplace as simple as Whole Foods, hand them a barcode and the merchandise, and away it goes.
Yeah.
So that is something, and again, we're going to talk more about warehousing trends, but I'm hoping that's something that maybe AI can help mitigate as we move forward.
I'm with you, Tandreia, and I am in the minority of folks that I'd be willing to pay a return fee, right? Because the interesting dynamic, in my belief, in my opinion, is we've made it so much easier, right, to order and also return stuff, as you were talking about, right? That's become long for years, the kind of the Amazon effect in terms of the expectation consumers have. But the flip side of that, because sustainability is also in demand, right? Making big tangible gains when it comes to sustainability is also in demand. And we almost can't have it both ways, right? Because as we return stuff, and we do so much of that, all of us do collectively, right?
Mhm.
We're just building that tidal wave of impact on the reverse side and the return side. And there's so much to be gained there. So I'm hoping, like you, Tandreia, that modern technology, be it AI or other, or more innovative and forward-looking business practices when it comes to better containing the challenge that returns, a tidal wave of returns every year in January, and really big throughout, what that poses for global business. So we'll see. I'm optimistic. Are you, Tandreia? I'm optimistic.
I'm optimistic because you're optimistic, Scott.
Okay. So we're optimistic, but we got to have outcomes, and we got to see some movement via the data. So we'll see. All right. So let's move right along. I know we kind of saved the best. Well, we started with the best, and maybe we're wrapping with the best. Maybe it's nice best bookends, Tandreia. So we're going to be talking about the warehousing sector in our final story here today. I'm going to pop this up here. So we're going to talk about a couple trends that Tandreia is seeing in just a moment. But in light of challenges such as labor market, especially, the technology movement, particularly in the warehousing world, has been off and running for years. In fact, according to Dimension Market Research, the global smart warehousing market is exploding. Today, it's estimated to be a $21.9 billion market, and it's projected to grow to a almost a $78 billion market by 2032. Less than 8 years away. How about that? And when it comes to specific tech trends in warehousing, this Forbes article we've got popped up here, that points to enhanced visualization, also augmented reality, and wearables, which has been a trend. Both of those have been trends for quite some time. But Tandreia, I can't imagine how many warehouses you have been in and out of throughout your career, optimizing how the performance and how work gets done. What's a couple of trends that you'd like to point to here?
I really enjoyed this article because with the visualization, it involves going in and optimizing the data, allowing the data to help with forecasting, which will help you with operations planning, helping you to better maintain efficiency, helping you to improve your accuracy. Having AI embedded into WMSs can make a huge operational improvement. Also, tracking is so important, knowing where your merchandise is, being able to keep track of inventory. When you get into the healthcare segment, serialization now in some cases is down to the unit. That is a lot of information to keep track of, ensuring that you don't have any excursions with things hitting expiration dates, and being able to have that embedded in a WMS can make just a tremendous difference in your bottom line because you can reduce waste considerably. The second technology that you were talking about with the AR and the wearable tech, augmented reality can really help, especially as we continue to talk about workforce shortages. It can significantly reduce your training curve. If you're doing things like having to maintain machines, having instructions and checklists to be right there, either on an iPad or on smart glasses, so that your team can see as well as read exactly what needs to be done, again, makes a huge difference. Wearable tech, whether it's exoskeletons, which we got to see in Modex to help reduce the fatigue on the body, wearable techs with scannables, wearable tech that again can guide your eye directly to the piece that needs to be picked. You're looking at making warehouses more efficient, more accurate, reducing fatigue, which improves safety and reduces injury. But then when you look at these two technologies, they're both so much less expensive and so much easier to implement than trying to outfit a warehouse with a ASRS, automated storage and retrieval system.
Right.
You can go in and now find technologies that are specific to the issues that you're having in your warehouse. For instance, if you're having a problem with damages, you're having a problem with shortages, you're having a problem with overages, there's technology out there like towers that you can put on dock doors that can actually read the barcodes that's on boxes. If it's inbound, enter that into the inventory. If it's outbound, decrement it from inventory. It records the product as it's either coming in or coming out. So if you need proof of what you received or what you sent out, there are technologies that you can go out and get that are scalable, that are much easier to implement, that can be actually issue specific to what issues you're having in your warehouse. The future for technology and automation and warehousing is incredibly bright, and the numbers that you spoke to are bearing that out.
That's right. That is right, man. I can see. Well, we need to have like a warehousing multi-hour series, Tandrea, to tap into all of your work and expertise in the area. No wonder you're excited about our fourth topic here today. I love what you pointed out there, from the bottom line impact to the safety of our workforce, which I'm so thankful that there's a lot more attention since the pandemic being applied to that. Enabling our workforce to be more productive and also save time so they can focus on more valuable parts, more fulfilling work as well. All of that. We talk about a lot when it comes to automation. And one other thing that's not necessarily new, but I think it's really cool, and I think it'll be even more important moving forward, going back to our e-commerce conversation, is these automated warehouses and the growth that we were talking about earlier. It's going to enable many companies to be closer to their customers, right? Because there's not always an opportunity, especially if you look at the Metro Atlanta real estate market and many others. You can't always afford the multi-billion-dollar warehouse or multi-billion square foot warehouse, can we, Tandrea? Right? Yeah, especially if you want to be close to these urban centers. But there may be smaller, much smaller areas available where if you go in there, automation first, right? You can really make great use of space really close to your customers. And then, man, you plug in analytics and you get more proactive and predictive about when certain orders will hit. Goodness gracious, you've got quite the recipe for modern e-commerce supported by a modern supply chain approach. So that's what's been going on for years now, Tandrea. I wish I thought of that first, though. Don't we both? Years ago?
Absolutely.
But we digress. All right. So, Tandreia Bellamy, I really enjoy your perspective throughout all the stories we've tackled here today. I'm really looking forward to you joining me much more often as we continue co-hosting more here. We got some great shows in the works, but I want to make sure, Tandrea, folks can find you and connect with you. Maybe they want to compare thoughts on one of the issues we've talked about here today. Maybe they want to bring you in and maybe have you as a keynote, or maybe they want to learn the latest 5K that you have ran and defeated. I need to learn that from you too. Anyway, how can folks connect with you, Tandreia Bellamy?
LinkedIn is the best place. I'm active on LinkedIn. We can connect, we can exchange information, and then if we need to do something a little bit differently, like meet up in person, that'd be a great way to start.
That is right. So folks, find Tandreia Bellamy over on LinkedIn and be sure to connect. So a pleasure. I want to just, before we wrap here today, big congrats to Anthony. I cannot wait to see where he goes next in his journey. Looking forward to maybe the three of us getting back together and interviewing him once again real soon, Tandreia.
That would be great. Would love to do that.
That's right. All right. Well, big thanks to Tandreia Bellamy for joining me here today. Big thanks again to Catherine and Amanda behind the scenes, helping to make production happen each and every show. Most importantly, big thanks to all of our audience out there around the globe. Y'all are exactly why we do what we do. Thanks for all the feedback and the comments, the suggestions as we continue to shape our programming in 2024 and beyond. So big thanks for joining us here on the Buzz. So here's the deal though, folks. The onus is now on you. Take just one of the many brilliant pieces of expertise that Tandreia dropped here on us today. Take one and put it in action. Your teams are craving a better way, and goodness knows innovation everywhere you look these days of changing how business gets done. So with all that said, on behalf of the entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton, challenging you to do good, to give forward, and to be the change. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.